Welcome to our second module. I hope you found Module 1 helpful and inspiring and the multi-choice questions not too difficult. Well done for being here today. Today's Module 2 is called Awareness. In the Safer Churches training around the regions, we spoke a lot about our movement's heart, motivation, and also a clear personal conviction of our why. This module presented by Sarah will build on this. Pastor Sarah, as many of you know, serves as the financial administrator at National Office, but who is also the passionate leader of the Children's Ministries Department across our movement. I love her conviction, her determination to see children flourish in churches, encouraging the love of God and the power of the Holy Spirit. I can think of no one better at presenting this module to you. Catch her enthusiasm and be blessed.
Kia ora, and welcome to Module 2 on Child Safety Awareness. In this module, we will explore the concept of creating and maintaining a child safety awareness culture within our churches. This module will help you to gain an awareness of the issues of abuse and harm to children and young people, the most recent status of our tamariki from an international ranking perspective, the extent of child abuse and harm within our nation and its generational effects, the reoccurring reality of harm and abuse within the Christian Church of Aotearoa, New Zealand today, the different forms and definitions of abuse. Truthfully, we don't know what we do not know. However, ignorance is unacceptable when it comes to the safety of our children and young people in your local church. We must become aware. As recognised leaders within the Assemblies of God movement, it is important that from this module you will come to acknowledge and be aware of the presence of abuse, the definitions of abuse, and the effects of abuse in its many destructive forms within our families, local churches, and communities. This means that you are actively involved in public awareness education, joining a team tasked with fostering and building a strong child safety culture so that every person within your faith community will be aware of your safeguarding programs and practices. Creating awareness by equipping your church with this knowledge, you prioritise the protection and well-being of your children and young people. You speak and model appropriate behaviours when interacting with them, and you respond to any concerns. This not only creates a collective whole church buy-in, but a joint responsibility that sends a clear message to those who abuse that such behaviours are identifiable and unacceptable within your church. We are very aware that abuse in its many forms is a sensitive, tapu topic. What is covered in this module may raise issues within your own personal history. If so, I would encourage you to get help quickly. Today, there are 1.2 million children and young people in this country aged under 18. As an overall generalisation, New Zealand, with all its perceived positives, does not rank well in its support, care, and protection of its children and youth. UNICEF has recently published its latest report, Innocenti 19, Child Wellbeing in an Unpredictable World. This report statistically evaluates 3 questions and ranks the 43 countries on their children and young people's well-being. The following 2 slides gives a summary. How have children fared in the face of this rapidly changing and often unpredictable global environment? What are the key factors affecting children's lives today? And what can be done to promote child well-being? Of the 43 nations represented, each was ranked in 3 specific areas: mental and physical well-being and academic skills. While our child, youth, mental well-being ranking has stabilised, we remain 43rd, lowest ranked country for youth suicide, with 15 suicides annually per 100,000. Life satisfaction in 15-year-olds between 2018 and 2022 has remained stable at about 60%, though we are ranked 36th. 80% of Kiwi adolescents have parents who spend time talking with them at least once or twice a week, which is a positive. Physical well-being. We are 35th of 43 overall globally. Child mortality has improved at 1.1 deaths per 100,000 children, ranked 29th. Our child's physical well-being is stable, though nationally obesity is ranked at 41st. Socially, our children have remained stable, though 28th of our 15-year-olds experience frequent bullying. Between 2018 and 2022, the second to highest in the survey. A child dies every 5 weeks in New Zealand as a result of family violence. Academic skills. 25th overall globally. Our academic skill set has declined to be 35th in reading and mathematics. Note, these results may be significantly affected by the COVID pandemic. For many of us, this may be a surprise, yet clearly our society's economic and social environments for the safety, support and growth of our children do not measure well in comparison with most other countries. Quoting the New Zealand Salvation Army's State of the Nation annual report released in January 2025, child poverty rates have increased as increased numbers of families seek government benefit support due to unemployment and/or economic hardship. Reported violence, neglect, and abuse in all forms against children continues to increase. Child sexual abuse rates remain high. An estimated 1 in 3 to 5 girls and 1 in 7 boys will become victims. It is estimated that only 10% of sexual abuse incidents are reported to authorities in this country. Of these, only 3% gets to court and only 1% results in a conviction. Children and violence in New Zealand statistics as at the 31st of December 2024. 5,709 cases of sexual assault and other assault against young people aged 15 to 19 years. 3,963 cases of serious assault without injury. 2,149 cases of serious assault resulting in injury. 1,223 cases of common assault. 1,683 cases of aggravated sexual assault, 339 hospitalizations due to assault, abuse or neglect, including ED. Last year, the number of children admitted to hospital with injuries because of assault, abuse or neglect increased sharply to the highest numbers in a decade. Every 8th homicide victim in 2004 to 2019 was a child. Over 2/3 were aged 2 or under. Where the killer's relationship to the child was known, 27% were mothers, 24% were fathers, and 17% were de facto partners. The number of children harmed while in some form of care continues to rise accordingly to Oranga Tamariki's latest report. General statements about abuse. People who abuse children can be any gender and any age. Children who have been abused may also then abuse other children. Statistics show that most abusers are male, though rarely women are known to groom or abuse children and young people. Therefore, an abuser of children could be someone you know. Although people commonly assume the risk of abuse comes from stranger danger, statistically, this is usually false, as abusers are generally known to the victim. However, this assumption can make it easier to groom children, as children may think that people known to them aren't strangers and therefore won't harm them. This assumption can also lull parents and caregivers into a false sense of security. Abusers may hold positions of trust or authority within the local church or community. Abusers do not fit the stereotypes of most people we hear about on the news. If they were easy to spot, then close adults, children, and young people would avoid them. Awareness means we have a basic understanding of the different forms of abuse. Let's look at some definitions in the next slides. Abuse. The definition of abuse is the harming physically, emotionally, or sexually by the ill treatment, abuse, neglect, or deprivation of any child or young person. Emotional abuse. It occurs when a child's psychological and social well-being is damaged over time. It can involve a pattern of criticizing, rejection, or degrading a child, isolating, corrupting, or terrorizing a child, exposing a child to family violence. Neglect. It occurs as either a pattern of behaviour or a single act, like abandonment. Neglect. It occurs as either a pattern of behaviour or a single act, like abandonment. Neglect fails to provide for a child's basic physical and emotional needs. Forms of neglect include physical, failing to provide adequate food or clothing or shelter. Medical, not seeking or following through with medical care or dental care. Emotional, being unresponsive or ignoring a child's emotional needs. Supervisory, failing to provide appropriate supervision for a child's developmental stage. Physical abuse. It's any non-accidental injury to a child, either a single event or a repeated series of events. It is considered abuse whether or not harm was intended. It includes punching, kicking, beating and shaking, biting, burning, or throwing a child. Sexual abuse. It includes any acts or behaviours where a child is used for the sexual purpose by a person in a position of power, trust, or responsibility. This includes physical contact for sexual purposes such as fondling or sexual intercourse, non-physical acts such as grooming, repeated behaviours with the intent of ultimately facilitating and maintaining illegal sexual acts, exposing children to pornography, involving children in the production of pornography, indecent exposure, or using the internet to initiate sexual conversations or acts. This material is genuinely from the Child's Matters, New Zealand. Conclusion. Although the abuse of children is timeless, there was a time in New Zealand history where the social attitude towards children and an unquestioning respect for the authority of institutions, like churches, and their representatives by adults, created high-risk environments in which thousands of children were abused. The concept that children should be seen and not heard prevailed for unknown decades, provided the opportunity for some adults to abuse this power imbalance within a relationship to abuse with impunity. When the silence of the child was accompanied by an unquestioning belief by close adults in the absolute integrity of those who cared for the child, whether as a youth worker, church school teacher, church residential home supervisor or pastor, this power imbalance was used to the detriment of many children. This, however, is no excuse. Ongoing, frequent, repeated revelations and prosecutions of church leaders and workers continue today to paint a sad picture of our past. Most concerning, however, is the marring of the reputation of Jesus Christ by those appointed to care for the lives of the victims who live with the trauma daily. The Royal Commission of Inquiry in 2019, in its final report on the abuse and neglect of children, young people and adults, and the care of the state and faith-based institutions in Aotearoa, New Zealand, between 1950 and 1999, contains damning revelations of systematic abuse by both representatives of the state and the wider Christian church. From this report have come many recommendations to government and churches that will become legal requirements of governance and care moving forward. We as a movement of AG churches embrace this process and make a commitment to do better. Research globally has made it abundantly clear that for many survivors, it may take an average of 22 years to disclose their experience of sexual abuse as a child, though men tend to take longer than women. Today, there is an increasing understanding of the devastating impact of child sexual abuse and how this impact may work against a survivor's ability to disclose the abuse even to those who are closest to them, gain insight into the connections between the sexual abuse they suffered and the difficulties they now experience in their adult lives, be it psychological, emotional, or relational. Abuse in any form has a huge, lasting impact. Research strongly demonstrates that physical and mental health problems resulting from all forms of abuse are significant. Untreated impacts of abuse in childhood can continue to impact on survivors as adults in the form of depression, anxiety, impaired interpersonal relationships, parenting difficulties, eating difficulties, and/or drug and alcohol misuse to cope with their strong feelings. The long-term effects of sexual abuse on children have been associated with almost every known mental health disorder and most of society's social problems, such as early teenage pregnancy, single parenting, and lifetime low socio-economic status. Research points to a quality of a child's home environment as a key factor in recovery. Early intervention can make the difference between a family that is able to develop an emotionally safe home environment that both heals and prevents future abuse, versus a family that leaves a child isolated and vulnerable in dealing with the aftermath of the abuse. Gaining awareness of the issues of abuse has been the focus of this module. Awareness of the issues of abuse enlarges us, strengthens our convictions, reshapes our relationships, and ultimately strengthens the church to protect our most vulnerable. We do not know what we do not know, but as a leader within a church, we must always endeavour to find out. Awareness could be contacting an absent member on Sunday afternoon, but it must be knowing that child safety is an agenda item discussed in your elders' meetings, that you have a CPO and the church knows who they are, and that your children's workers have all been police vetted. As disciples of Jesus, we are called to be aware, and from that awareness to intentionally and sometimes sacrificially care for others, especially our children. We must create and maintain a church-wide culture that our churches will be safe places, and that this is a whole church conviction, not just leadership responsibility. The task of maintaining a culture of awareness is never completed or simply mentioned in a document kept on a file. Everyone must pay attention to our physical and spiritual environments. We actively support each other, we learn together, and we respond to concerns. An awareness of abuse is a challenging topic. I'm aware that it may raise issues within your own personal story. If so, I would encourage you to seek assistance immediately. May I encourage you to build and maintain within your own faith community a culture of awareness that is not only informed about abuse, but does everything it can to be a safe place for all, but especially the children in your care.